Welcome to episode 40 of Walleye Chronicles. On this week's episode, David Schaible of Fish&Tips. He's a creator for YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. We talk fishing, we talk trapping, we talk all kinds of stuff. So have a great listen. Hi, welcome to another episode of Walleye Chronicles, where I find you guys out in the street, bring in here, and we have a conversation about fishing. Just a regular conversation, nothing crazy. Remember, if you're looking to be on Walleye Chronicles, hit me up on my socials, Smile and Fish or Matt Snell. This week, I have a gentleman that I recently met down at the Oshkosh Ice Show, Dave Schaible. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
Wonderful. So I met you at the ice show. You have a TikTok, YouTube, fish&tips.
Fish&tips.
So what's that? What are you basically trying to accomplish with that?
I like to educate people with fishing, and I also just like to show the really cool stuff that I see all the time while I'm out in the outdoors.
And you're a trapper.
Yes. I just started trapping 2 years ago.
Right, that's one thing I noticed right away on your site. I'm like, oh, he traps. I grew up doing a little bit of trapping. Not myself. My dad's friend was a big trapper, so just being around those guys, I got to trap a little bit and did a little bit in my youth. So let's take it way back. What's your first memory of fishing?
First memory of fishing was back when I was a kid. My mom and dad fished a lot. They were actually both involved in the Boy Scouts.
Okay.
My mom's father was a scout, and he was pretty high up in the organization, and so she was involved in the scouts. And then my dad was a scout leader, and that's how they met. And yeah, they had me, and so then we would fish when I was a kid. My mom said that they used to take me, even when I was a infant, they would take me in the boat, would rock me asleep.
So where'd you grow up?
I grew up, well, I kind of have a two-stage sort of growing up. Part of it was Kanto when I was younger. That's when I was like starting to be more than just a kid. You know how when kids start to learn what they like and stuff. So Oconto until I was in the 6th grade. And then I moved down to Cambridge, which is down by Madison. And that's
hop.
Yeah. Well, my mom works for the state of Wisconsin.
Okay.
So she ended up transferring to Madison. So at that point is when I started to really get more into fishing on my own, because my dad lives in Marinette County. And so I started to do more fishing on my own, because that's what I had to do in order to go fishing.
So you left the one of the walleye capitals of the world, and you went down to middle of Wisconsin, and I guess walleye fish is not the greatest, but more of a bass panfish area.
So we ended up, for quite a bit of the time I was down in Cambridge, we ended up living within distance of having lake rights on Lake Ripley.
Okay.
Largemouth bass record holder for Wisconsin.
Well, there you go.
I ended up doing a lot of casting in the evenings right off the dock that we had access to, and using a the jitterbug.
Okay.
And bass just love that thing. As long as you can keep the weeds off of it, it's an amazing lure.
So when did what your first memories of going fishing? Was it by yourself or with buddies, or how did that kind of come about?
So I started going with friends. Ice fishing, we'd all get together to do some fishing. One of the other guys I hung out with also was able to access a dock, and there was more weeds. So the dock that I was fishing from is more of a sand flat. So the evening was great there. But during the day, it was pretty barren except for fishing right under the dock. And at that point, you're catching more rock bass and little bluegills.
Mm-hmm.
But in the evening, you get larger fish. You get the big bluegills coming up on the sand flat, as well as bass, sometimes pike. And then is more weedy by him, so you can fish more during the day there.
Just go back and forth then.
Yeah, pretty much on our bikes.
Nice.
Carrying tackle box on one handle and our rod on the other handle.
So you guys get in trouble, or you guys stay out of trouble just to fish? Everybody gets in trouble when they're fishing.
I stayed out of trouble for the most part. There was a couple occasions where the president of the dock association that we belong to he wasn't yelling at me, but he was basically telling me, hey, don't be leaving fish slime on the dock too much.
Gotcha. Garbage and So he was like an early Karen, like a dock Karen kind of.
Yeah, pretty. I mean, there's a few people on that dock association from Illinois, so
Right.
not a lot of.
That's crazy that people get like that just get crazy. I was in Door County a few years ago, and people were yelling at us we weren't even remotely close to their dock. I don't know. They were just yelling at us for fishing. I'm just like, I'm confused why you're bitching at me. We're 20 yards offshore. They're yelling, you're not going to catch shit. You're terrible. I'm like, I'm just just floating by, casting some crankbaits. I don't know what the big deal is.
We used to walk around quite a few docks on Lake Ripley too, and people would get mad at us for walking around their dock fishing too, but we kept our feet wet in Wisconsin. As long as you keep your feet wet.
You know, that rule gets a lot of kids yelled at.
Yep, it sure does. And adults too.
Yeah, I got yelled at one time for that too as well. But the same thing. Hey, my feet's wet, man.
Mm-hmm.
So you're on the bikes then. So when you moved on to getting driver's license, did you able to expand your horizon? And
Yes, actually, right when we started getting our license, they put in a pond by the water tower in Cambridge, and they had just stocked it full of fish, and it was supposed to be kind of a community fishing hole sort of thing. And adults couldn't keep fish from there, but kids were able to. So, we're still 16, so we're able to keep fish from there. At that time, I still wasn't keeping a whole lot of fish. I don't keep a whole lot of fish in general, partly because I'm not huge on eating fish, and I also don't like cleaning fish that much.
that makes it tough to want to keep them.
Yeah. But and then we were fishing there quite a bit. There's some good bass in there. And then the bluegill, I was using a fly rod for bluegill with poppers.
So fun.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the funnest things I think there is you get a lake where you can do that on. It's so much fun.
I think that the fly rod is one of the best tools to catch any fish but a trout. That's going to be very controversial.
That is interesting to think about it, actually, because, yeah.
Yeah, I've caught a lot of fish on the fly rod. I have never caught trout on a fly rod, though.
I have never either. I've never actually used a fly rod for trout fishing. Growing up, we always did the stream trout and all kind of stuff, and those spinners are just a jig, a split shot, and a crawl or whatever. But I have a fly rod because it was just for bluegills. Mm-hmm. It was just for popping bluegills. I so much love doing that. I gotta get out and do that again. That's a lot of fun. But yeah, I don't think I've ever cast a fly rod at a trout before. So that's pretty interesting.
I only did it once.
There's people that do it for everything. There's a guy that I can't remember where he was from, but he was catching walleyes on fly rods as well. But it wasn't a surface. It was like kind of a suspending thing he was using and catching them on a fly rod, which I thought was just cool.
Yeah. I'd love to do that with some streamers or something.
Right? For walleye. That would be fun. Yeah, I can operate a fly rod. I don't think it looks great. I'm not a river runs through it, standing on a rock, tossing back and forth. I could get it out there. It doesn't look great, but I can get it there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely something you have to spend the time to master. I was fortunate to have a large backyard back when I lived in Cambridge, and so I spent a lot of time trying to pop the heads off of dandelions.
Oh, there you go. That's funny. Yeah, I mean, thank God that you didn't have to get very far away from the boat for the bluegill, but
yeah.
Like the stock lakes, them big hybrid bluegills. God, that's so much fun because they're used to most of those lakes. They feed them the extra food, so they're used to coming to surface anyways. But that's cool. So when you started driving, was there any new lakes? What's the one lake that once you could go on your own that you're like, I want to get here, I want to fish this? What was the one? Was there one or a couple that you wanted to get to?
I always wanted to fish Rock Lake over by what was that, Lake Mills?
Yep.
So I ended up ice fishing that one year. I've only ever done it once, and I did fairly well, but then I had to go to work.
So were you always ice fishing too? Were you getting ice fishing too when you're young, or a little bit?
I was definitely ice fishing. I was sort of the person that was always looking forward to the next thing, like really excited about the next thing for the year. And so we had the in fisherman ice fishing VHS.
Yeah.
And so I'd always be trying to watch those, even though my dad was sick of them. And so now I have been getting them all on DVD now, so I can keep watching them.
Speaking of that, was the information in your show growing up? Was it the one you had to watch every week, or what was there on your radar?
We didn't watch a ton of fishing TV. We would watch the DVDs, VHS, but In Fisherman was probably the biggest one that we would watch. But as far as like watching live TV, we're more interested in going fishing than watching TV on Saturday morning.
Yeah, I hear you there. Yeah, In Fisherman was pretty much for me. And then my dad let me get In Fisherman magazine because it was at the store every now and then. I get that, especially the Walleye Insider. I think it was called the Walleye Insider. When they changed to individual ones, it was like Walleye Insider, Catfish Insider, whatever. But I would get that one in the spring, and that's what we'd sit down in the river and fish in the spring. And I'd be like trying to figure out how to catch fish all the time.
Yeah.
So you moved on after you got out of high school, and got a job, and you got all this crazy income now, or whatever. What's the first thing you bought for yourself that you were proud of, that you want?
The biggest thing was a sonar for ice fishing. I bought a Ice 35, Humminbird Ice 35, and the first fish I caught with that was a bluegill, which is actually the silhouette that I use for my logo.
That's
now,
cool.
I saw this bluegill was almost as tall as it was long. It was a really healthy male bluegill. And from that point on, I realized that ice fishing is super amazing. I was always a fan of it, but now I can see these fish and I can jig specifically to them and match the mood of every fish that comes in. That's it, man.
So is it ice fishing? You open water or hard water? If you had to pick.
See, now I have a boat now too. I always had a canoe, but now I have a boat, so I've been getting more into open water fishing. But I'd still say that ice fishing is my favorite.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, one thing is it's a lot easier for me to film ice fishing because you have limited space on boat. But then I really like the precision of jigging, mostly a panfish so far, but now I've been getting more into walleyes and whitefish as well. And I just love that precision. I love to dial in and get focused on one fish.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think it's easier when you're younger too, because you can get into so many places where you can't get into. I mean, when I first graduated high school and I was out just doing whatever, it seemed like I did more expanding in the ice fishing world first than I did in the other world, because I could just get out and, I'm not that much older, but it seems like the ice was much better back then than it is now. So you could get out pretty much all the time. If you had a friend that had a four-wheeler or snowmobile, even usually by now we were driving trucks everywhere, and you just get out and get cracking.
Yeah, it's definitely a kind of a everyman sport sort of thing. You don't need a big boat to take a bunch of people out, and you can go anywhere you want on the lake all of a sudden.
Right.
That's the beauty of Wisconsin winters, is that now you got these over 15,000 lakes that pretty much become public land.
Pretty much, yeah. As long as you're okay to walk, you can get out to whenever. I mean, as long as you're okay with walking, you can go anywhere, whenever, right? I mean, yeah, if it's, Poygan the last couple of weeks, there's a lot of people have been walking out there, but it's, a couple mile hike, and you're right in the thick of it, just like the guy with the four-wheeler. So
exactly.
It does make it even out too, very even out. And now, I mean, I think years, especially, I guess when we were growing up, probably a little easier because there wasn't quite the technology. You had your the Humminbirds, or what was the other one? Oh, you had when the Vexlar first came out, or Markham shortly after that. Other than that, there wasn't much out there for electronics. I mean, you were doing 2D, I guess you wanted to. We did 2D for lake trout and stuff like that in Green Lake, but other than that, it was, Vexlars, and that was about it. Yeah. We'd go sit on tip ups and just sit there and have fun all day long and chase flags. That's
more so what my dad did. He liked to set out the tip ups. We'd have a jig rod in, but it'd be with a little bobber, and you'd be watching the bobber waiting for it to twitch.
Yeah, a little sponge bobber on.
Yep, exactly. And so when I was able to get my first sonar, that really changed it for me. I do actually have a little story about the depth finders. He used to clip them on all of his kids' jackets so that there'd always be one in reach. Well, we ended up getting in trouble at school once because they thought it was drug paraphernalia.
Oh Jesus! I used to clip mine all the time until I cracked my tooth when I was messing around and one hit my tooth. I cracked my tooth. I'm like, okay, that's not cool. That's funny. He just has them on you and just pop off. Yeah, I mean, how you with the cold?
I'm great in the cold. I love the cold. You can always put more layers on.
Right. Right. So you said you got a boat. Is that recent?
Yes. Well, 2-3 years ago, something, 2.5 years ago, we'll say, is actually, well, I had a boat before then, but it wasn't fully working. And then I sold that boat to my buddy. He got working, but both of these boats were family boats.
Okay.
Originally belonged to my dad, then my brother, and then the older one came to me. Then I sold it to my buddy. The boat I have now was my dad, my brother restored it, my sister, and now me.
It stays in the family.
Yeah.
So does that open up your fishing too as well, or were you just kind of borrowing people's boats or going with other people, or how'd that change?
That's definitely opened my fishing a lot. I mean, I've gone on other people's boats, but it's a lot different when you can get on your own boat and do your own thing and figure out spots whenever you want. I definitely go by myself a lot, and it's made bass fishing more accessible to me because now I can go find those hidden locations, rock piles, weed edges, and cast to them and figure out what the fish want and not have to depend on anybody else.
Right. It's kind of nice because you get to go at your own pace.
Yes.
Right. You don't have to worry about, picking somebody up. You can be a little late to the water. You can be early to water. You can be whatever. And you don't have to make, your decisions aren't like boat decisions. Your decisions like, I'm gonna go over here and go fish this. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You're not taking any shame for it. You're generally, I think you learn just as much when you don't catch fish sometimes than when you do. If you're paying attention to what's going on.
That's definitely a thing that most people don't pay enough attention to, I feel,
right,
is paying attention to when you don't catch fish. I'm not trying to brag. There's very few times that I don't catch something, but every time that I don't catch something, I learn something. And if you want to catch lots of fish all the time and big fish, you have to be willing to have days where you don't catch fish.
Right. For sure. I feel that way all the time. Like I'll go out and just absolutely have an idea behind where I think they're going to be or something I want to try and just freaking bomb. And like, oh, I don't even know if there's even fish here, I just have no clue. But then you take a minute, you sit down and go, okay, why aren't they here? Well, you kind of work your brain through what you maybe mistake, and then you can kind of turn that into something better down the road. Or sometimes I just flat out sometimes just don't want to move 1,000 times. So I'm like, God damn, I don't want to move anymore. It's been a long day. And you feel sometimes if you're in somebody else's boat or with somebody, you kind of keep going. You have to keep that pace to try to catch fish. And sometimes I'm like, I'm getting a fish every 10-15 minutes. I'm just gonna turn the radio on, enjoy the view, and call it a night.
Yeah. Well, it's okay to enjoy the view sometimes. Right. There's a lot of beautiful things out there. This state is a very beautiful state.
I think some people, they'll get stuck into trying to that next bite, per se, that trying to find them fish and keep moving, instead of being like, hey, I'm catching enough now, or I'm doing this now. Like sometimes I used to love trolling. I still like trolling, but I feel like it's just not a waste of my time. I kind of feel like it's a waste of my time. I feel like if I'm not on the live scope learning or seeing fish, I'm doing something wrong. I don't know if it's maybe how the world and tournament fishing is kind of shifting or whatever, that you almost feel like you shouldn't be trolling. But God, I like trolling. I like just putting the stuff back. And with troll motors nowadays, you press a button and you just sit there and watch for, it's almost like ice fishing. You're watching for a flag to go down.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's why I don't do a lot of tip-up fishing or trolling, is because I like to be very engaged in my fishing.
Yeah. That's but that's where I kind of get stuck. I just get too engaged and I get into like my tournament mode, and then I kind of feel like I ruin my day,
Yeah.
I'm like, shit. So sometimes I'll go out fishing and I won't take anything else with me. I'll be like, okay, I'm just going to go fish these rock piles and have fun in the rock piles. And if I catch something, I do. If I do, I don't, and call it a day. That's my way out of getting too crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can get wrapped up in so much sometimes that you just kind of get stuck. And I think sometimes you got to sit back and relax. Like, people take fishing too seriously sometimes.
Yeah. That's definitely it's not a bad thing to be passionate about fishing,
Right.
but I had at least 2 days where I was trying to make videos
Oh, that's the worst.
and it just wasn't lining up. I wasn't catching fish, and when I was catching fish, the camera gear wasn't cooperating.
Right.
And so you just, at the end of the day, I had to just think back and be like, you still caught fish today, and there's a lot of people that didn't catch fish today probably.
Right. When I take that pelican case and put it in the truck, I feel like the kids are like, oh, we're not catching fish for sure today now because the camera gear's out, right? And you get to landing, especially I don't do too much ice fishing filming. Sometimes I do, I guess. But during the summer, and I usually put GoPros on the truck, on the boat. So I got, the front, the back, the middle, and all that stuff going. And it's like some days it just isn't. That's just, you can be catching fish and you're netting them in weird places, or you just forgetting or something turns off or overheats or all that kind of crap, and it's going to have just a terrible day. It does take some time to find. I actually almost find it better now where I've decided not to put this stuff on sometimes, but I just bring it with me. Yep. And if the day starts going well, I'm like, oh, I can make a video of this. And then I'll just start filming and then just back film the like entrance and all that kind of fun stuff. The stuff that doesn't matter. Because before I'd be all set up like, oh yeah, we're filming everything from the day we leave the freaking house. From the moment we leave the house to the moment we get back and clean, we're doing everything. And then it's just a mess. Or something bad happens and you forget about something. A lot of times you just forget to hit play or hit record.
Yep.
You're like, shit.
Yeah, I've had a lot of instances where I was ice fishing and I was jigging and I was like, oh, I gotta turn the camera on quick, and I mess up my jigging cadence and fish is gone.
Right. Yeah, you're worried about this or that or grabbing something. I started buying the bigger SD cards, the crazy ones that can go like 2 days and just leave it on. Then all you have to do is worry about batteries.
I started doing that, and then I got a better camera that records in higher quality. So now I had to upgrade my SD cards again. I did discover the driving mode on my GoPro. So I'm able to just run it, and then after I catch something, I can hit the record button, and it saves the last 5 minutes of.
That's cool. Fishing. I like that. You can do all the audio stuff you can do with them too, or favorite moment. I wonder what you can yell. You can say something to bookmark this spot or something like that.
Yeah, you can. I just haven't figured it out yet.
I just started once I got the bigger cards, I just turn the things on and just stay on. Although I do regularly forget because I'll put one up above me when ice fishing, and I just have it upside down. I just flip it over, but I'll forget about it when I put my shack up, and I'm like, where the hell that? Oh shit! It's laying someplace in the back. But
one time I had my underwater camera down and I forgot that I was recording, and later I went back to look at the videos, and I discovered that a muskrat had came and grabbed my camera and swam with it for like a couple feet and then dropped it.
Hey listeners, let's talk outdoor streaming. What is the best outdoor streaming platform out there? Well, it's simple. It's Fix TV. Not only do they have this great program, but they have all kinds of hunting and fishing shows along with some weaponry shows. So when you get bored and need something to do, get your fix with Fix TV. And when you're done with that and you have that fix to get out in the outdoors, jump on therealshot.com and get everything you need to satisfy your fix.
That's funny. So now you're a full-fledged adult.
Yep.
You do whatever you want, whenever you want. What's your favorite thing to do?
Oh, I really enjoy really it's whatever I feel like at the moment. I am definitely a person that changes with the seasons and what I want to do. As fall approached, I couldn't wait for trapping, and now ice fishing's here, so I can't wait to get out on the bigger lakes.
So you got no break, really. Do you hunt too?
Yeah, I hunt too.
So you have no break. Like most of us get you go out hunting. If you shoot something early, okay, cool. You might go back in the boat for a little bit. But everybody gets them 2 to 3 weeks where you go from open water to it's freezing. Can't really do much of anything. But you're out trapping that time.
Yep. Yeah, my wife is not too happy about it too. Yeah, this year I actually wasn't planning on deer hunting this year. But back in September, I got my bear. And then I got all that meat in the freezer. And I was like, man, this is really cool having a lot of meat in the freezer. It was the first big game mammal I've ever got.
Yep.
And so I wasn't going to archery hunt because I didn't have a bow at that time. And so I was like, well, we'll see as gun deer season gets closer
Right.
if I'm going to hunt or not. And then I was trapping in the canoe, and I'm like, you know what? I could take this canoe into some public land and, do some deer hunting during gun deer season,
Yep.
because that's the thing about public land during gun deer season in Wisconsin. There's a lot of orange out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I just looked on the map and I found what I was looking for with where I could take the canoe into a creek or river
Yep.
deep into public land. I was like, well, way back here is where all the deer are going to go once the shooting starts.
That's
And
correct.
if I can get back there, it's going to be all right. And there was 8:30 in the morning, 2 bucks came in, and I got an 8-pointer, my first deer.
Awesome. That is, if you can get to the back before anybody else does, or just get to the back, you do see a lot more deer, especially public land. It's actually really good hunting. My son actually just bought a kayak this year just for that purpose, just to
Yeah.
get back farther. 'Cause it's easier, it's quieter. Yeah, I mean, depends on the creek getting out, if you're gonna paddle hard or not, or which way you're paddling or out. But it's still a hell of a lot easier getting in than walking through public lands.
Yeah. Well, and so the piece of public I chose, it was a lot of sucking mud and flooded timber. So there's no way anyone was getting back there without like blowing everything out.
Right.
So I was like, all right, this is going to work. I had my chest waders on and everything, and it worked exactly how I pictured it, which is very rare, but it happens sometimes.
Right. Oh, it's funny. The more you plan, I think the worse it goes sometimes.
Exactly.
So let's get into the trapping a little bit. So there's not a lot of people that trap anymore. So what made you want to start trapping?
Well, actually, a guy that went to the same high school as me, and we actually played football together, he started trapping over in Eau Claire.
Okay.
And so we reconnected over Facebook. He is an admin on a small game hunting group on Facebook. And so I joined that group, and he's like, hey, I'm this guy that went to high school with you. I'm like, oh, holy cow. And so that's how we reconnected. He started trapping, and he started making videos himself. And then I was just like, man, that looks kind of cool. My dad had always been telling me to take his traps and go out trapping.
Right.
My dad can't walk so well anymore. So I'm just like, hey, Dad, I'll take those traps if you're still looking to get rid of them. So he gave me 30 traps. And
Nice.
so then I took my trapper's education course in March, not a year ago, but the previous March.
Yep.
And that day we got 10 inches of snow. I had to drive down to Fond du Lac from Appleton. That drive turned from 40 minutes into an hour and 40 minutes. And it was a really fun class. Even if you're not looking to start trapping, I still recommend it because it was a really cool class.
Right.
You got to learn a lot of stuff about wildlife. And
Mm-hmm. If you want to learn about something, trap it. You learn everything about that species. It's pretty crazy. It's a lot of fun. It's difficult. It's technical.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me kind of trolling or something on the lines. It's very, very technical in how you go about things, and there's so many different variants off of every little thing you do. There's so many different things you can do.
yeah, it's something you have to constantly adapt to what you're seeing. And it's something that people think is easy, but go out there and try to get an animal step in a 2-inch circle. You're going to find it's a lot harder than you think.
Yeah, people don't realize that's what it is. It's literally you're looking them to put their foot in a specific spot.
Yeah.
And everything around there, all their senses are telling them not to put their foot there.
Exactly.
You got, some attractant and things like that can be around, but still, man, you also were there, right? And they don't smell you every day. It's not like it's a house cat or something like that. You're trapping something that's not used to smelling people whatsoever, and you got to try to trick them into putting that foot in that pan.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I got my first coyote back in
I
November.
saw that.
And
That's a nice one too.
oh, beautiful. Just beautiful female, 29 pounds.
Wow.
And she's just gorgeous. But I've had several dug up traps for animals finding my traps and digging them up before I managed to connect with that one.
That's crazy. So what are you trapping?
Wow, pretty much everything that I can right now. I mean, right now I don't have traps out, but I've done muskrat, coyote, raccoon. I tried to trap some mink, but that didn't turn out how I wanted. but
Those are wily.
at some point this spring I'm gonna hit more muskrat and maybe some beaver. I did find some beaver sign while I was trapping out this fall, so we'll see what happens.
There you go. What's your favorite to trap so far?
I think the muskrat, to be honest. It's really fun water trapping is a lot more fun because your check time is different if you're in a submersion set to 4 days instead of every day. And so that makes it easier to go check your traps. And then I took the canoe out this fall for muskrat trapping, and I really like being in the canoe. And so that was really fun.
That's cool. Yeah, it can be a lot of fun, especially if you have good areas, and there's especially now there's not a lot of people doing it.
Yeah.
So most people don't really. You can get permission pretty easily. It seems like. Yeah, it's a lot. It can be a lot of fun, a lot of work, but it can be a lot of fun too.
Yeah, the prices are down.
So a labor of love.
Yeah, it's a labor of love now, and I actually am planning on trying my hand at some fursuing as soon as I get a decent amount of pelts to send out to get tanned. You get a discount for if you tan a bunch of hides at once. So I'm gonna try.
So how's the skin? Is the skinning your least favorite part?
The skinning's fine. The fleshing I don't like that much. The skinning the coyote was definitely difficult, but that's just because I didn't have the right setup for it.
Right. Yeah, when you're going into something first, you don't really know what you don't need or what you need or what you don't need until you do it.
Yeah. Well, and I skinning raccoons and muskrats is pretty easy for me, but with coyotes, it definitely benefits you to have some sort of winch or something like that where you can raise and lower the animal.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time just kneeling down trying to skin this coyote.
Right. You want to make it easier for yourself. It's tough when you're bending over all the time.
Yeah. But that comes with as you trap more, you get more toys for trapping.
Right. Yeah, like anything else, you kind of start off just kind of bare bones, try to figure out what you need. And I was like, I definitely need that because that would make my life easier. But other things you don't have to really, you can kind of skimp on. So that's cool. So what's your favorite trapping moment so far?
Oh,
the coyote?
The coyote was really cool. I mean, that was a pretty big accomplishment for me. But I think my favorite trapping moment was the first raccoon I trapped. It was the second day of me having traps out ever, and I got a beautiful black raccoon. And that was just so cool to see how their colors can be so different. So this one, the tail was, instead of that gray and light gray, or gray and brown, it was black and really dark brown.
That's cool. That is cool. What was the hardest part of trapping? What has been the hardest part of trapping for you?
Carrying all the stuff, really. It's a lot of metal you're carrying.
That's true. That is true. You got a lot of stuff to carry. Yeah, and you're always working in gloves. Yeah, you always seem to be cold or wet.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. The cold is fine. Being cold and wet makes it harder. But, when you ice fish here, you end up getting used to being cold and wet sometimes.
True.
Especially the last couple of years with the rain we've had on snow and ice sinking down. I was just in a bunch of slush yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my favorite trapping moment was a friend of mine was trapping. He had an otter tag, and I helped him go out and set some, and we'd go check them, and he ended up getting one. But it was a cold night, and it was coming. How the trap was set was, I guess we kind of did a little wrong, but the animal was able to get back up the slide. It slid a little bit, so it slid down in and it got it. It was able to get back up, and it froze to the slide.
Oh no.
So we had no bucket with us. We were just basically just doing walk checks. I think we had a couple tools, but nothing to hold water, nothing like that. And so he ended up getting in the water, and it's super cold, and he's flipping the water up, and I'm trying to just slowly rock it back and forth without tearing any hide on it and stuff like that. And that took us forever, and his hands were bright fucking red, and I felt so bad. I'm like, dude, I can walk back, get something, but we had nothing, and you want to just rip it off. I mean, he'd been working for that otter. It's pretty cool. It was just that whole version. It was it was a switchback crick that just went back, 10, 15 times. And this thing would go up one side, slide on the other, up one side. So we had a couple set in there, and that was a lot of fun. Kind of miserable getting it out, being that it froze, but it was.
Yeah. Well, and what's really cool is now you can get you can trap 2 otter a year now. We've managed to bring their numbers back up so much that there's no draw or anything for them. So it's just really cool. And I think it's unfortunate that people don't highlight these success stories with wildlife and their recovery. I mean, trapping is the only way that we can measure the otter population, that the DNR can measure the otter population.
It's crazy that trapping, I mean, I don't know why. I mean, I guess we can probably guess why that trapping's not as popular and as it once was, but obviously there's no money in it, and people, I suppose a lot of woke people out there think that it's cruel and unusual punishment and all that kind of crap. So I would assume that trapping is gonna be very difficult to become mainstream ever, but there's still a few people that are out still doing it, and that's kind of cool to see. That's why when I come across a trapper, I like to talk to them, because there's not many people out there. Most of the guys are too old to do it anymore or dying off. It just it's kind of a lost art that's gonna probably be gone in 10, 15 years.
Well, the good news is that I've been seeing a lot of younger trappers getting into it now. I believe it was, I want to say District 6 of the Wisconsin Trappers Association. They just had a really big class graduate from their trappers education course, and there was a lot of young people in it. Cool. So I think that now you're getting more young people in that see it for the hobby and meat and the sustainable textile, the fur. And that's just really cool.
Right. And they do unchecked, some of these animals can just take over. We need to hunting doesn't really care. I mean, there is somewhat of an industry behind raccoons, I guess, hunting. There's a few guys that have dogs, run dogs and stuff. Other than that, and some coyote guys, but there's not a lot of ways to get, other than trapping, to get some of these animals out of the world.
Yeah. I mean, there are no animals that we allow to trap as far as just recreation goes that are in danger of going extinct. And in fact, a lot of them, raccoon and coyote especially, they have much higher numbers now than at any point in US or the North American history.
That's crazy. Yeah, and there's not a lot of I love watching the trapper shows, but I seem like all the trapper shows want to do is sell you their trapping stuff.
Yeah. Well, and that's the problem with pretty much every industry around the outdoors now, is they have to sell something in order to keep going.
Yeah. Well, that concludes our trapping talk for this episode. So back to fishing. So if you were out, your ice fishing's your favorite. Bluegill fishing, I'm guessing, is.
I really like catching. Big bluegills are their own species apart from little bluegills. When you get past 9 inches, they just start acting funny. And I don't know why that is, but that's just how it is. And they are so cautious at times. If it's a bluegill that's bigger than 9 inches, I can spend 10 minutes just trying to jig this fish in. And, sometimes they'll hit. And when they do, bluegill are the hardest fighting fish in the world for their size. I firmly believe that, right after the smallmouth. And so, I always say that if bluegill got to 5 pounds, nobody fished for bass.
That's probably a fair assessment. So what's your favorite setup?
I really like jigging with a ultralight rod, kind of noodly, 2-pound test for the wintertime. Summertime I use 4-pound for panfish, but I haven't had any issue with catching fish on 2-pound. I've caught a lot of walleyes, several pike on 2-pound. It works really well. I use copolymer for my line, and then tungsten jigs generally. I'm trying to get away from lead just for the, this might be controversial to some people, but I'm not a huge fan of the lead because of birds and stuff that need to get grit from the bottom.
I got you. How big of I guess I never asked this bluegill guy before. How big of adjustment? How big of a impact is tungsten to that world, to the bluegill world? Because now the shit you guys got is so small. I was looking at stuff out here from, I think it's Wolfgram or whatever. I couldn't even see where you tie the thing.
Yeah. I'm lucky that I'm nearsighted, not farsighted. So I don't need glasses to tie things. I just need glasses to see my flag.
That's fair.
But so it's really cool that we have such tiny jigs that can go deep fast.
Yep.
Because my brother actually lives on a very deep glacial bowl lake, and he fishes bluegills that are 20 feet down in 50 feet of water. And so he really likes that. If you're fishing shallow though, like I said, I'm trying to get away from lead. Don't underestimate that density of jig though.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend, John, who he actually makes bismuth and tin alloy jigs, and they're basically the same density as lead.
Yep.
So I've been trying to work with him a little bit to get good ice fishing jigs. I really like a flat lead jig when the bluegills are really off in shallow water, because that thing will just flutter down. Bluegills love when things flutter down at them. In fact, I do what I call the drop in like it's hot move when they're really inactive. And so I'll take my rod and just very slowly jiggle it downward to them. And then I'll stop right above them and barely move it. And then they'll hit it even when they're really inactive.
Yeah, it's crazy. Just the lightness and how small things got. In the walleye world, we just love it because now you can have something that looks like an 1/8 ounce jig that's a 1/4 ounce jig. It seems like everything got smaller for you that way. I still don't know how you guys tie stuff. I was going to buy some small bluegill jigs for my dad just to be mean to him because I thought it was funny. I mean, I cannot believe how small some of that stuff is in the hooks. I mean, I get it. That'd be tough for me, especially in the cold getting that stuff tied. Once it snapped on the lake, I'd be like, I can't do this anymore. It's too cold. What else have you noticed in your time that has helped or has moved bluegill fishing or that kind of pan fishing forward?
Definitely the sonar. Having the sonar where you can see the mood of that fish, and then I combine sonar with camera a lot when I can, and so now I can. When I'm able to use both, I can measure the fish's reaction on the camera and compare that to what I'm seeing on the sonar.
You're learning.
Yeah. And so then once you get good at figuring out what the mood of the fish is on the sonar, then you're able to, when I started using sonar, I at least tripled my catch.
Right.
I mean, that's probably underestimating it, to be honest. And so I recommend to everybody that's getting into ice fishing, if they want to really go after bluegill or any panfish, get a sonar, get a Vexilar FL8 or something.
Right.
Just something so you can see where that jig is and see where that fish is.
Right. So when you do the camera, you hang above it or you sit down so you look straight ahead?
I have it looking straight ahead generally.
I gotcha. And as your reel, are you the open face reel or the spinning reel?
I use both. My problem with spinning or with the inline reels is I like to have my palm on the reel for an inline reel, and with the cheap 1-to-1 reels like the Frabill 1-to-1 inline reels, you can grab the entire reel with your hand and it gives you a really great feel,
like a pistol kind of.
Yeah. Whereas with some of the fancier reels, they'll have a little bit of opening on the side that you hold the rod with, and so sometimes my fingers touch the spool while I'm reeling and it stops it.
That's funny. Yeah, I never really got into inline. Well, I don't do much panfish stuff. Everything's pretty much walleyes or white bass walleyes, things like that. Maybe some crappies every now and then. So I don't really get too much into the inline reels.
I mean, spinning works great still, and now we have all these spinning ice reels that have a longer stem. It makes it a lot easier to jig with your gloves on.
That is true. Yeah, if you're always in the gloves and have the glove world going. Okay, so let's get to open water. So what's your favorite thing to be fishing for open water? Are you doing the bluegills and the rocket bobbers in the open water, or are you getting into other things?
I fish for everything open water, yeah. I mean, And generally, when I'm going out by myself, I'm trying to catch bass, but I have no problem catching walleye or bluegill or anything like that. I'll take the wife out sometimes. We'll just go after panfish in general, either with bobbers or with drop shot with worms or something.
So if you're out bass fishing, what are you looking for? What are you looking to do? What's your favorite technique, I should say?
My favorite technique, I really like the finesse stuff a lot. And power fishing is really fun for bass, and I get why people do it, but I see a lot of people blowing past spots, power fishing, that if you then stopped and cast a Ned rig or a wacky rig or something there, you'll probably catch fish there.
How awesome is a Ned rig?
It's really awesome. It's really, really awesome. It catches everything.
Yep.
You can catch bluegill, you can catch bass, you can catch walleye, you can catch sturgeon. You're not supposed to catch sturgeon in most places, but
sometimes they're in the way.
Yeah.
Between there's a few crankbaits that I've taken from the bass world that I just love. Ned rigs. There's always generally a Ned rig on one of my poles, and I don't fish bass. And there's always a drop shot.
Yeah.
And I don't fish bass. It's just kind of things that are in my boat when I'm banging around the lake, what I'm looking to use, and depends where I am when I use it. And drop shotting is so much fun.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's one of the more underrated techniques. I mean, just like when you're ice fishing, if you got tip ups out, you're saying all your tip ups a foot above the bottom. That's pretty much what you're doing. Drop shot. You're keeping your bait exactly above the bottom where you want it.
Yeah, or a little higher or lower. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And when they're hitting it, that's a lot of fun. And it's to me, can be the ultimate finesse way to go about things too, because you can slow that thing down so slow. Yeah. Depending on where you're at in the world and if you got a little current or not, or it's so much fun.
I caught my my latest personal best largemouth on a drop shot 2 summers ago, a little over 5 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a drop shot it was actually the plastic I was using on the drop shot hook was a Ned rig plastic made for the Ned rig. But I think it was the Kalen's leech or something like that, Ned rig leech or something. And it had these little tiny legs going off the side of it. I was just like, man,
right?
That'd be great on a drop shot.
Right. Yeah, you so many things you try, and there's so much plastics out there is crazy. We're, in the back at Fix, but outside here is the Reel Shot, and they have just walls and walls and walls of plastic.
Yeah.
And it's Looney Tunes of plastic.
The first time I came into the Reel Shot, I just was like a kid in a candy store with all those plastics.
Yeah, there's so much, and there's so many different. And now it seems like companies are really doubling down on it. It's almost like the hard baits aren't really coming. They're not coming out as many hard baits as there are plastics. Like every company's got a new line of plastics every single year. Now we're into the whole stretch and that whole game that who would have started that? It would have been
Z-Man Elastic.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Once that came out, and everybody has their own version of that, and different scents and different this and that, and yeah, it's crazy.
Well, I think part of it is that you're always going to have to buy more plastics. You can catch a lot of fish with a hard bait.
That's true.
But you can only catch so many fish with a plastic, and then just plastics. I feel they're a little bit more versatile than hard baits at times, especially if you're a person like me that likes to fish really tight to cover. You don't even get a crankbait next to that big brush pile with all the little tiny sticks.
Yeah, you're staying away from that, and you're probably going something else. Yeah. I mean, I'll pop off the bottom hook on a crankbait, but even then, I'm still eventually going to lose that crankbait.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love casting crankbaits and rocks and all that kind of fun stuff, and a lot of times I'll lose the bottom. I'll just take it off, because if I don't, I'm going to lose the lure.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
I actually caught my first crankbait bass last spring. I was fishing along just a shore edge, and I was casting. I was trying to use top water that day, but it wasn't working. So I'm like, all right, let's put this crankbait on. And I was just casting. I'm like, all right, last cast, I'm gonna go somewhere else, try something else. And there was like a 2-pound bass. I barely felt him hit. Actually, I was just reeling. I'm like, oh, this got really heavy. I must be snagged on weeds or something.
Yeah, it's crazy. Sometimes they just don't hit. They're just on it.
Hey listeners, let's talk outdoor streaming. What is the best outdoor streaming platform out there? Well, it's simple. It's Fix TV. Not only do they have this great program, but they have all kinds of hunting and fishing shows along with some weaponry shows. So when you get bored and need something to do, get your fix with Fix TV. And when you're done with that and you have that fix to get out in the outdoors, jump on therealshot.com and get everything you need to satisfy your fix.
And that's at least when I do a lot of casting for walleyes with crankbaits, and it's like there's no hit to it. Just all of a sudden, I always tell people I'm with, you feel that rattle, that every time when you're jigging, you feel that the vibration. It'll just be gone sometimes. And you're like almost like you got a weed on there. Just stop, but set the hook.
Yep, hook sets are free.
Yep, and if the weeds pop off, weeds pop off. But with the fish, you can hook the fish and bring them in. And I don't think I've noticed weeds with walleyes. They don't last very long on those on the crankbaits. If you have maybe one and a half times that I'm at the boat and they're gone. It's like once that surface, you better have a good net guy to get them things in the boat.
Yeah, and I just finally got a decent net at a rummage sale. I got a net with a rubberized net.
Yep.
And a longer one because I was just using that little silver metal net with the super old one, and it had so many holes in it that I fixed by tying some braid on it just to fix the holes. I've hooked that net so many times.
I've gone through so many nets. I still don't think I found one I like yet. I just don't. I started buying smaller ones, like the extended ones, obviously, but I just go to Menards and buy like the cheap pole extender thing.
Okay.
So if you want a cheap way to do a pull, you get a nice net, but you don't have to buy the big handle for it. You can go to Menards, and Menards Master Force makes everything. They have it's like a 6-foot pole that extends to 12 feet, and it's like $40.
Oh, I didn't think about that. I was trying.
Yeah, so you get this the paint pole.
I was trying to use 2 10-foot lengths of PVC on my old net because there's a couple spots that me and my buddy fish from bridges.
Oh,
where you're talking 20-foot drop. You gotta get down there.
Yeah, that's why I love the paint poles because they're. I mean, you can buy the brand ones that are really expensive, but if you buy the off-brand ones, you're getting a $300 net for end up being $120 when it's all said and done. It's kind of nice. But yeah, I've never really found one. I'm stuck between like there's 100% rubber ones.
And that's what I have right now.
And then there's the coated ones. I kind of like the coated ones, but the coated ones still have the stitch area. And it seems like where that's stitched together, you always get hooked in that fucker.
And with the rubber one that I have now, it's so dang slow going through the water.
Oh, I suppose.
Oh man, I swear you can try to put that thing in there as fast as you want. It's still only going half a mile an hour.
Yeah, I haven't seen one that I liked it. And I don't like big nets. I like to do the smaller, but that has gotten me in trouble a few times, not having a deep net. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I don't know. Maybe someday.
Well, and you're never going to have the ideal net that you want for every fish.
No. Yeah, I literally have a stack of nets, and I don't know. I have nets when I'm like, tournament fishing. There's a certain net I put on a couple nets, put on the boat for that, and then when I'm out just having fun fishing, sometimes I don't even net fish. I'm like, I don't know, I'll just see if I can grab it today. Why do try to have fun But yeah, it's just never really gotten a good net that I liked. Their brand, it's been all over the place. I think I've had every brand in the boat, and even had some really nice, like them nice Green Bay ones. If you've seen those big, nice homemade Green Bay ones, we had one of those in the net, and we ended up dropping it on the lake, and it was gone because it was all metal. It was gone in a heartbeat. And the funny part is we never found it with all the electronics we have. And at the time, I was running a 360, and I'm like, well, fine.
Well, yeah, we'll find that.
It's a net this big. All we need is a jig on it. That's fine. We'll back up. We know where it is. 360 out there. Never saw it. Never saw it again. Man. I'm like, it's only 8 feet of fucking water here. How do we not find this thing? We never found it.
My buddy, or not my buddy, my nephew, 14-year-old nephew, he just lost a shotgun out on Green Bay hunting diver ducks, 10 feet of water. They've gone out there several times. They can't find the thing. Using sonars, using cameras. They had a diver go out there, try to look, nothing. They could not
that
find
sucks because it's so tough because I didn't know, and where we dropped it and it was all rocks. I'm like, okay, well, it's not going to hit, and like sometimes like And when a bag go, you're in the muck or whatever, you drop something, it's gone once it hits, right? It's gonna hit, it's gonna blow out, and then it's gonna silt back in. You're not gonna see it. But this was all rocks, and the only thing I could think of is the current was more than what we thought it was, and it maybe like kind of tumbled, and the net got kind of caught in the current and pushed it down farther than what we thought it was away. But
that definitely could be.
But yeah, you catch all kinds of things. I've caught fishing poles and all kinds of things. I've watched people lose fishing poles.
I've caught a lot of northerns with like 20 feet of line coming out their mouth, ice fishing. They'll grab somebody's jig and just take her for a ride.
That's true.
My dad actually once caught his own pole on a tip up. He had a tip up set about 20 feet away or so from where we're jigging, and that flag pops up. We go run over there, left our lines in the water, and he's waiting, watching the tip up. All right, it stopped. Let's see if he's there. And he goes to pull it, and he's like, I don't know, there's no fish on here, but it feels like there's something on here. And he pulls it up. All of a sudden, there's a jig with some monofilament. Starts pulling in the monofilament. There's a jig pull. This fish had gone over to where we're jigging, wrapped on his pole on his line. So it went down into the water and then back up the other hole.
That's a bit funny. Went back and it wasn't there. Where's my stuff? That's what happens when you go back and nothing's there. You never know what can happen.
Yeah.
So what do you think of the current state of fishing now?
I mean, fishing's great. I mean, there's a lot of controversy out there in the fishing world right now, especially with the live scope.
Right.
I mean, it's just.
Are you a scoper?
I don't have one. I'm sure I'll get one at some point. But it's just a tool.
Yep.
I mean, I could see people not wanting to be allowed in tournaments. Especially, I'm surprised that it took this. I think it's BASS that got rid of it now.
Muskie got rid of it last year.
Yeah.
Which that was kind of. They probably shouldn't even have had it because the way muskies are compared to everything else, they just sit there till you piss them off.
Mm-hmm. But I'm surprised it took this long for BASS to get rid of it, because if you want people watching your fishing, watching people live scope is not very fun.
No, it's not a lot of fun. I like watching fishing tournaments. Even I don't bass fish much, but I still watch for the competition, right? Watch for a down thing. But yeah, if they're staring at a scope, it's really tough to watch. It's really tough to watch. And live scope isn't the be all end all. Got to have that to catch fish, because as of recently, going on in Poigan ice fishing, if I throw my live scope on with all the whatever's in that thing, the fish do not react the same way as if I turn it off and fire up the Vexler. I'm catching fish. Live scope, I'm generally not catching fish unless it's a big pack. And that's what's a big pack and they're really hungry in that thing. But if they're just cruising through, they generally don't want nothing to do with it.
Yeah. No, I get that.
A lot of radio waves going down there.
There's a lot of people that I know that have live scope, and they say, fish, a lot of times fish don't act the same way, and so they'll just use it for finding structure.
Yep.
The thing about live scope is that if you're a bad fisherman already, it's not going to turn you into an amazing fisherman.
No, you actually have to work harder, people.
Yeah.
You have to work harder to be better at it, because I have had live scope for 2 years now, and it's been a lot of work. You kind of have to retrain your brain a little bit of how things work.
Well, a lot of people don't realize I figured this out after I started using sonar. You know how much it sucks to see all the fish that you don't catch?
That's true. Same way you have
that can really gut punch you.
Yeah. People just move on to the next fish. Well, I get that, but at some time it's not easy to do. I mean, you can put it down ice fishing, spin around, see there's a school of fish. Okay, go over there and fish them. It does help you finding that stuff. Open water, it's a lot more difficult than these guys, Hoyer and Hume. They make it look so easy, and it's not. It's a lot more difficult than that.
Yeah, and these people in these tournaments, these are highly skilled anglers.
That's all
they are better than you. Like that's just how it is.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Is that people get upset about this, but those anglers would kick your ass without all that stuff in the boat. So
they would kick your butt with you having it,
right? Yeah, you could have it in the front, and they'd be in the back, and they would still beat the hell out of you. Yeah, so that's what people don't realize, that it is a very distinct skill, and it's tough to do, it's tough to learn, it's tough to stick with, but you still need all the other, you have to know where the fish are at, even start out. You can't just they're relying on so many other things than just their live scope to catch those fish. Does it help them? Yeah. And the like a sniper rifle in the hand of a sniper, right? I mean, you could give him a 22, he's still going to be able to kill stuff, right?
Yeah.
If you put that same awesome rifle in my hands, I may not be able to shoot a side of a barn.
Yeah.
They already have the skill to do these things. And
If you can't read a contour map, you ain't going to catch nothing on live scope, really.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, I find it funny people say that stuff, because there's been so many things in the past that have come about, and people, with 2D or side scan. I think side scan is even not, to me, it changed my fishing more than anything else. Just easy to read stuff, easy to read structure. You don't have to go.
It changed how I went fishing with people that had it. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's easier to find fish. I mean, it was, 2D, you only can find fish, you drive over them. And what we know now is that when we drive over fish, they either drop down to the bottom or they scoot out. Well, we learned that from side scan, right? So you learn that you have to stay off that structure. You can't just go, oh, there's a rock pile, let's go over and see if there's something on it.
Yeah.
No, you stay off 30 yards or whatever, and you go drive past, scan. Okay, there's fish there. I can set up what here and there.
Yep.
But in the past, you would drive over that. You probably push those fish down the rocks. You didn't see them in 2D, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, let's go on the next one.
Yeah. Yeah. Using 2D sonar, I've learned that it's like, all right, let's go scan this area. All right, now let's go fish somewhere else and give this place a break. We'll come back here later.
Right? Yeah. It's all those things. Everything is made it what it is today. If even down to the tungsten and all the different reels, the braids, the fiber, what's the lines, everything is kind of, everything plays a part in it. It's not just forward facing sonar. I mean,
and like now with where the fishing industry is where it's at right now, there's always something for you to dive in on and like really get specific about.
Yep.
And to people's detriment and success. If you want to switch lines, I've been using copolymer a lot lately. You can use fluorocarbon, you can use monofilament, you can use braid, you can use they got these micro braids now.
And now people are going back to mono.
Yeah.
With certain lures, people are like, hey, you have to, if you're doing this, you should go back to mono because it has this much thing. I'm like, oh my God, I can't give up on all this.
Yep. Yep.
It took me, I don't know what was harder, to learn how to use the forward face sonar or learn how to tie an Alberta knot.
Man.
Blade to fluoro or blade to anything, just learning to tie those knots I'm older, so we didn't. I mean, I was in my late 30s before I had to tie knots like that, and it's like, holy, because I'm not a bass guy, so it was mono, whatever, and go from there. You wasn't really doing anything else. Now I'm every day I'm out fishing, I got to make 2 or 3 of those ties.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the boat with the foam plane with, here's how you tie an Alberto knot. Step 1.
Right? I used to just sit at work at lunchtime in front of my computer, just put on YouTube and just tie them. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm learning how to tie knots. It's
very important.
Right? It is. It does. And when you have a bad knot, 2 years ago, I was doing something wrong with my knots. I couldn't figure out what it was until I watched the video again and just got it. But I was losing knots just casting.
Oh.
And I don't remember what I was doing wrong, but it happened in one tournament. I just couldn't. I set the hook, I lost the fish. I had a snag, lost the fish. Cast once, lost the fish, and just was losing stuff. I'm like, in the middle of the tournament, I sat down. I was, a little angry. Pulled the phone out and just played the video and watched it and went back to it. And then it was like I had like a glitch in my system for a while that I was tying it wrong so much. But yeah, you got to find out whatever, because there's so many of them. There's a good half dozen braid to whatever knots, and some of them seem a lot. I mean, some are probably easier than Alberta. How my old fingers work, that works for me.
Yeah. I started trying to use the FG knot.
Oh, yep.
And I'd be able to cast that for probably an hour, 2 hours, and then I'd see it start to just come unraveled. I'm like, no, we're gonna have to retie you. And I was like, I gotta figure something else out. And I heard about the Alberto knot, and I'm like, all right, you're a lot easier to tie than the FG knot, at least for me.
Well, it was funny when I first started doing them. The first year I fished, if I broke a knot or broke something off in the boat in a tournament, it was difficult. Yeah. It was like I was stressing about doing it, and I would leave them. I'm like, well, I got a good knot, just leave them. But I'm thinking, dude, and I'd feel the end of my leader. I'm like, dude, that leader's getting torn up, man. And every day I try. Now every day I'll go home and I pop them all off and I retie a new thing on every time. But back then I was terrified to do them during the tournament because I was afraid that I would get a bad one, it would not go right or whatever. But yeah, all those little things you got to learn. There's so many things. Even me as an old fella, an older gentleman, I'm getting up and I'm gonna be 50 here soon, and there's so many things that I have to learn on a weekly or yearly basis. To if it's forward face sonar, learn how to tie knots, learn all these other different kinds of things.
I have to relearn how to use my sonar every ice fishing season.
Right. So if I told you you only get to go fishing one more time, what are you doing? Who are you taking, and where are you going?
That's really hard. I feel like I would go with my dad up on Loch Vita's. That's right on the border of Michigan and Wisconsin. It's where the world record tiger muskie was.
Oh, okay.
But we used to do our family camping trips there every year. So I guess we would, I'm not sure if we would go muskie fishing or pan fishing. I'm not very good at muskie fishing, but probably go for panfish. Because I always had fun have fun fishing with him. He's not gone. He's still here.
Yeah.
But that'd be really cool if I only have one more day. Otherwise, I'd like my mom's dad, my grandpa Al. He and I always talked about fishing, and we never actually ended up being able to go fishing. So, you know what? Actually, we just lost my wife's grandpa. And me and him got really close really fast after I met my wife. So I'd also like to go fish with him too.
That's awesome. Is there any place that you'd want to go that you haven't gone? Any like bucket list things that are like on your smallmouth guys want to come to Green Bay or whatever? Is there any I know they catch huge bluegills in Iowa. Is that a thing for you? Is that on your radar, or is there something else?
It's not really on my radar that much. I mean, I still have to catch a 10-inch bluegill.
Right.
I've caught so many 9 3/4 bluegills.
I talked to the state biologist for Iowa like a month or so ago. And I didn't realize the bluegill and the size, and that so many old Wisconsin guys go down there and fish down there during the winter time because it's less snow. There's not as much ice to drill through, and they have just huge bluegills.
Huge bluegills. They got that good longer growing season for them. Yeah. A lot of nutrients too. But yeah. Probably go to, I've actually always wanted to go to a Red Lake for early ice.
That is,
you hear about that every single year.
I hate it because it happens for us during deer hunting. So I'll be in the deer stand and checking videos and seeing all these guys up in the Red Lake. I'm like, God, I would love to do that. But
and that's my issue. That's always been my conflict. Why I haven't been gun deer hunting hard the last lot of years because sometimes we get ice fishing during gun deer season, and you're sitting there, you're like, I haven't seen anything.
Right. Well, that doesn't happen for me. So I generally don't do the bluegill fishing. So there's really no walleye fishing around too much, unless the poigan freezes over, I guess. But I got two kids that all they want to do is deer hunt. So opening day is we're pretty much locked in that week. But I watched that Red Lake thing going, God, I should just leave right after deer hunt. Just leave and go up there.
Well, it's like, I want to go out there. I also don't want to go up there on the weekend.
Right.
I want to be one of those people up there during the week, the first few people out there,
right,
before it gets too crazy.
That'd be fun. Cool. Well, thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. Hey, if you want to check out some pretty cool videos and stuff like that, and some trapping stuff, fishing stuff, all kinds of cool, check out Dave's stuff on Fish and Tips on YouTube.
Yep.
TikTok and Facebook too.
Facebook, Instagram
for everything. And if you're looking to be on an episode of Walleye Chronicles, hit me up on my socials at Matt Snell or at Smile and Fish. And remember, there's two things you can do every day to make someone's life better. One is give them a smile, and two is take them fishing. Have a great day.